Francisco, it's Rex Broadcasting Wrestling Observer with Dave Meltzer and Bryan Alvarez.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Let's get it on!
How's it going, everybody? Dave Meltzer here for the next 2 hours. We're going to be talking pro wrestling. Of course, we have Bryan Alvarez, Figure 4 Weekly here, as well as Bruce Mitchell, the Pro Wrestling Torch, for the first half hour of the show, and then we will be joined in about 25 minutes or so, 20 minutes, by Mick Foley, professional wrestling legend, unless you talk to Ric Flair. And we'll talk about, we got a lot to talk about with Mick Foley between his book coming out, Hustle, WWE, Ring of Honor, and whatever else is going on, in fact, and the presidential election, too. So, should be a very interesting interview. Let's start with, we got Bruce and Bryan. I guess we should start with the big news of the week, probably. There's a couple, they're both WWE related stories. Number one is next year when the Spike TV contract is up, it's pretty much become public knowledge now that WWE is, I don't want to say looking to get out, but certainly looking to drive up the price. It's interesting in the sense of, if you really look at the package, it's probably delivers about half as many homes, if you look at the entire package, actually less than half as many homes, as it did when TNN, which used to be Spike, which is the old name of Spike TV, was negotiating for it 5 years ago and ended up getting it 4 years ago. Yet, there's a good chance that they're going to have to pay more to keep it. It's kind of interesting because a lot of people thought, the one thing they wouldn't be able to do is raise those rates because the numbers are down, yet they may be able to raise those rates due to the competition, due to a couple of networks bidding against each other.
Doesn't he want a 30% raise?
What?
Doesn't he want like a 30% raise or something?
He's hoping to get $40 million in the new deal instead of $28 million per year for the cable deal, which would be, that's another big, increase in the profit margin while, the other revenue streams, like the house shows and the pay-per-views continue to decline.
I think it's a ballsy move to have everything practically cut in half and be asking for 30% more and probably being able to get it.
Well, positioning's everything. Got to give him credit if he pulls it off. And looking at the landscape, I think he can.
I think he can. He probably can because a couple of people are interested. The thing is this is the TV industry, and we've seen how fickle and how weird it can be. And if USA is not interested and nobody else is interested, and TNN or Spike gets another new expense like with a football package, it could work against him and shut him out completely. The odds of that happening are very small, though. But anyway, we will come back. We're going to talk more about a more interesting subject. Well, I don't say more interesting subject, but this week's other big subject, which is that Pat Patterson is no longer in the WWE, and the reasons for that. Before we, of course, get to Mick Foley, we're back with more Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, with Bryan Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. Bruce Mitchell is here with us from the Pro Wrestling Torch, and we will be joined by Mick Foley in just a couple of minutes. And I will give the phone number. It's 1-800-878-PLAY, but you're not going to be able to get through, and all lines are lit up waiting for Mick Foley. So after we finish a call with Mick Foley, that's probably the time to jump on, because I think it's going to be like that for most of the next hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes left. Before we talk about a couple pay-per-views, 2 pay-per-views this week coming up. Pat Patterson is, on Tuesday's pay-per-view, will be the last night, theoretically, of Pat Patterson in WWE. He's worked for the company on and off, mostly on since, whatever it was, 79 or so, when he had the series with Bob Backlund. So it's 25 years, which, and has been in wrestling for about 47 or 48 years, and he says he is retiring. And, of course, there's obviously more to it than that. He was in the position, he was the booker who told Fritz Von Erich that his kids have a drug problem, and he's no longer the booker, and nothing changed. And that's kind of, I guess, the analogy of what happened this past couple of weeks. Bruce, any thoughts on this?
It's really interesting to me at this point in his career, at the age of 64, that he just didn't keep his mouth shut and kind of ride along with it and put in a few more years at the salary that he was making. That he really, you don't see the guys in that position in their careers taking a stand on principle. And even if he comes back, he's made two very powerful enemies that will not go away, that know that he has doubts about Triple H. And that was a very interesting career choice. And I don't know that a lot of those older veteran agents and people that have been around so long would have made the same choice.
Well, none of them would have. I think that it was either one of two things. Either he thought that he actually could convince Vince, or he was, kind of looking to get out. And the idea is that, hey, the business has been Pat Patterson's life, like it's been a lot of people's lives, and maybe he was concerned over the future of the business, which a lot of people are. I mean, cause it's a funny thing because, WWE is so profitable, and like with this new TV deal, they can afford, another drop in attendance and everything and still be profitable. But from a popularity standpoint, it's a dangerous situation, and I
think it actually might have been both. I mean, I think that he wanted to get out, and, I think he's been around long enough that, I mean, it would be phenomenally stupid for him not to know that that would be a bad thing to say. So I think it was a situation of him wanting out, and he figured, A, that's the fastest way to get out is to bury Hunter. And B, if you're going to get out, you might as well, let him know what's wrong on the way out.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the worst job I've decided after this week, I used to think the worst job was writing for WWE. The worst job for sure in sports entertainment is booking UFC, because this week has been an absolute disaster with about a week and a half to go before the show, which is this coming Friday night in Atlantic City. You had 4 people, for various reasons, pull out of the show. And you had 3 injuries, and then one person just pulled out. Under very strange circumstances. And I don't know, man. I mean, the worst part is I was actually talking to Joe Silva, I think it was Monday afternoon, and all we talked about was, isn't it amazing that, like, nothing has gone wrong with the show since Phil Baroni hurt his knee? And it's like, I have now realized that I will never say that to him until after a show is over.
Right.
Because I mean, it was like the next 3 days were just, then 4 guys pull out in the last 3 days. And including the main event, Guy Metzger, Tito Ortiz, that had been built up, and then, and the only marquee match really on the show to the public. And now it's going to be Tito Ortiz against Patrick Cote. And Patrick Cote has not fought in UFC. He's a total unknown, and, I mean, it is what it is. I don't know what to say. Just the realities of guys getting hurt and guys not wanting to fight Tito Ortiz on a week's notice, and who can blame him?
Yeah.
You kind of see why pro wrestling turned into a work all those times, because this is kind of problems that you have, with such a brutal thing and with a real sport, and a real sport that takes such a toll on people.
Well, it was the training, actually, that did it, and the pro wrestling injury rate was like, 2 at one point, not, things like that have happened. But I know what you're saying, and I mean, the reason pro wrestling did take the turn that it did was because of the fact that you can do it night after night, which you couldn't do with the shoot fight. The fact that you can control the outcomes, which is really important. You know what I mean?
Right, Dan Severn versus Ken Shamrock style matches.
Yeah, and you can avoid those kind of matches. Although I've seen some pro wrestling matches that have been pretty brutally horrible.
Yeah.
Okay, and speaking of which, last Sunday, in New Japan, I mean, they had a booked pro wrestling match with a world title change. I mean, that was worse than anything in a shoot match. So, I guess that just says something about the bookers. So, anyway, no one wants to say anything about that?
No, it seems like it'd be easier than it turns out to be a lot of times to book all these things, to get people in the right place. But on the other hand, you don't have guys falling out the way they have in the last week in the UFC, or hopefully you don't.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, I feel bad for UFC because, none of this stuff was, they could do nothing about it. Whereas New Japan, they've dug themselves into this hole, and every single thing that happens to them is really Inoki's own fault, so I have no sympathy.
And will continue happening.
Yeah.
Well, Tuesday, of course, the big novel, Taboo Tuesday pay-per-view, the interactive pay-per-view, and I guess I'll ask both of you, how many buys? You guys predict?
Didn't I say 205 last week?
Mm-hmm. Are you going to stick with it?
Yeah.
Okay, Bruce.
What did he say?
He said 205.
Yeah, I was thinking 200, so I'm kind of in the same range.
Yeah. Oh, well, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Who do you think's going to wrestle Hunter? Not who you want to wrestle Hunter. Who do you think's wrestling Hunter?
Michaels.
Okay. That's who they want.
It really doesn't matter, but I'd say, if Michaels or Benoit, neither one's going to do the job, so it really doesn't matter. It's how they position everything with Randy Orton.
Yeah. Okay, Jericho and who do you think's going to wrestle Jericho?
I just go by the push, Batista. I'd go by who's pushing on television.
You mean that they're stacking the deck?
Yeah, they should be, and if they can't stack the deck, they're in trouble.
Yeah, I know if it doesn't work. I know.
Yeah. I think that, I don't know who's going to be, but I think that there's going to be a title change. I just think this is one of those shows where, I think they're going to want to try to convince the fans that it was the fans that, booked this title change or whatever.
Well, then to me, the one you got to change is the tag team title, because I don't think you want to tell the fans that you booked, Jericho losing to Batista.
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean. I mean, there has to be one of the belts has to change on this show.
Well, in that case, it should be Shawn Michaels beating Triple H.
I actually thought that they might change the world, though.
Yeah, that would be.
It's one of those shows where, I don't think anybody thinks there's going to be a world title change.
Yeah.
But for that very reason, I think that they might do it. Plus the fact that, this is an interactive show, it's the first one, and maybe this is going to say, you fans that voted, here's your reward. Okay, but then what happens is that probably at Survivor Series, he gets it back, so it's kind of like, you know what I mean? It's like you asked for, you got something, but it really didn't count. Yeah.
I don't buy it go that far. I just don't think it will. I think they'll let them pick the match or whatever, and I think they'll go by legitimacy, except for the fact that they'll stack the deck with the booking. But I don't buy it. I think that I think Triple H will, in his mind, needs to stay strong until he meets Randy Orton.
Were you guys surprised, and maybe I'm reading more into this, about not thinking that when Vince McMahon was asked in the Rockford paper a couple days ago, it ran yesterday, but I think he was asked on Thursday, actually, who the greatest wrestler of all time was, and, the names he threw out were Luthez, Hulk Hogan, and Anthony Naraka. I mean, I was stunned on about 10 different levels on all three of those names, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I was too. I mean, I would think you would go with the guy who built you your mansion and built you your tower and all that, the guys that did that. And I could see Hogan in the mix, but I'm just shocked at Rock and Steve Austin, particularly Steve Austin. Rocca was before his time, and Luthez just seems out of left field for somebody who's... I mean, it's so weird. It's so weird because,
they never got along when Luthez was alive. And Luthez never had nice things to say about Vince.
Right.
I was just blown away.
And Rocca was before his time too. I mean, by the time he got to his father's company, Rocca was a show himself.
Rocca would have been done when Vince started as working for his father as an announcer was 71, I think, and Rocca was long gone by then. Rocca
worked as an announcer with his dad, didn't he? I mean, with
Vince. Yeah, Rocca did work as an announcer with Vince Jr. during that period. Yeah, in the 70s. So he would have known him from there. But I mean, he never would have. I wouldn't say he never would have seen him wrestle because when Rocca was hot in the late 50s, Vince would have been 13, 14 years old, and Vince always liked the heels, like Jerry Graham and Buddy Rogers. Right. But Rocca was the big star then, the big drawing card. So
it's like one of those interviews where I would have liked to have seen him say it. Just reading it.
That worries me. Then again, a lot of things worry me these days. Let's see. Any thoughts on New Jack as far as him being?
You know what? When I read this, I just think it's never going to happen. But this is an indication to me that it sure would be good for a lot of people that if they licensed wrestlers, that they actually had some sort of athletic commission, and that there was a bond put up, and there was some sort of standard for running professional wrestling shows. That you could stop some of these things. That someone with a record like New Jack in this business maybe would have a hard time getting a license,
or maybe after this would have a hard time getting work. I know what you're saying, but for the fact that there's, one of the things that I complain about this all the time is even like in WWE, if somebody does something heinous in WWE, either in the ring or fails a drug test or whatever. The fact is TNA's sitting there salivating. Oh, please somebody get fired for something horrible so we can have another name to put. for Jeff to be.
To his notoriety, if he can get out of jail, that is.
Well, you know he will eventually.
Yeah.
They're not going to hold him forever for stabbing a guy 14 times with a sickle in the middle of a wrestling match. Anyway, we have got to head to a break right now. Bruce, I want to thank you for joining us here at the beginning, and we'll be back with Mick Foley in just a couple of minutes and start taking your phone calls. Listen to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, with Bryan Alvarez, the Figure 4 Weekly, and, of course, special guest. He'll be here for the next hour or so. Mick Foley, pro wrestling great and pro wrestling legend, except on Raw when Ric Flair is doing a promo. And we've got so many subjects to talk to Mick about. We're going to get to him in about a minute. Real quick, if you're looking for the most up-to-date pro wrestling information, you can go to www.wrestlingobserver.com. We have our daily updates, TV reviews, and, of course, information on how to get Wrestling Observer newsletter, which I put out every week, and Figure 4 Weekly that Bryan puts out every week. And also, my book is out, so you can go to Amazon.com, Tributes to, and I really like the book, and plus it comes with a free DVD. There's about an hour of interviews talking about the various wrestlers profiled in the book, including Luthez the Sheik, Johnny Valentine, and Tim Mr. Wrestling Woods, Freddie Blassie, Terry Gordy, and a lot of others, Owen Hart, Andre the Giant. So anyway, that's that. Mick will be talking about his book in just a second, among many other things. So, and Bryan's book's coming out when, Bryan? How many more weeks?
It's a very good question.
You don't know?
No.
Okay. Well,
I don't know till it's on the shelves, but when you order Dave's book, you might as well order mine too. And Mick's.
And Mick's. But Mick's children's book is coming out. Now, is it coming out Tuesday? I know in some bookstores already have it, Mick.
Oh, I'm on the air?
You are now on the air officially.
Yeah, it's supposed to be, the official date is Tuesday, but I did see people in both Toledo and Chicago who had the book, so I guess they put it out a couple days early.
Now, you just came back from doing a weekend with Ring of Honor. Any impressions? And I wanted to ask you, did you watch the 60-minute match last night in Chicago?
Yeah, I watched the whole thing. Yeah, I did. I thought it was awesome. I mean, honestly, I thought it was one of the best matches I've ever seen live.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I had seen the Dayton 1-hour match on DVD, because I'd said in the Elizabeth show, then, you know, I guess it's hard to tell when guys are telling the truth when they do interviews, but I was telling the truth when I said, you know, I wouldn't have gone and been a part of Ring of Honor if I hadn't, you know, been exposed to it, the product, and really liked it. And so I had not been exposed. I'd heard about it, you know, and I heard they had some great wrestlers. But when I watched the DVD, I was really impressed, and I watched that 1-hour match with Samoa Joe and CM Punk, and I thought it was very good. And I thought their match last night was even better than that. Yeah,
that's what a lot of people have been saying, that it was better than the first. And the first one I thought was excellent. Any, you know, now that you've been there, I mean, any, you know, guys that, you know, that really impressed you, that surprised you, maybe you hadn't heard about?
Well, some guys I had, like Punk and Joe, I'd heard about, and, you know, really think they have a future, you know, elsewhere, if you know what I mean. One thing I said to Gabe Gabe Sapolsky, when I came in, I said, I hope you know, I told Vince that I was coming here, and I told him how good some of the guys were, so I don't want to seem like, you know, I don't want to come in and ruin your company if I suggest a couple guys to him. And his feeling is, you know, hey, if somebody can get a break up there, not only is he happy for them, but it also is a good reflection on Ring of Honor. So those are two guys that I would highly recommend. And then I'd never seen Bryan Danielson before, and I understand he and Samoa Joe had a tremendous match last week. But I saw him work with one of the English guys.
Is it Nigel McGuinness, maybe?
I'm not sure it was Nigel or not. I saw Nigel. He worked in the match I was involved with last night, and I thought he was great. There's like so many good guys out there. It's a lot different, I think, than when I was an independent breaking in, where there'd be a good guy here or there, and a lot of the guys were just basically doing the same tackle, drop down, get it again stuff. I think the independent, you know, the talent out there is really good. Yeah.
Now, a lot of stuff is been going on in your life besides just wrestling. I mean, you've been doing a lot of speaking at colleges. You did the big debate with Bradshaw
right.
in Miami. You've done a lot of radio, political. You know, I'm talking about this presidential election, which I know you feel real strongly about. What got you involved as far as getting so strongly involved in the politics this this election?
Oh, man. Well, you know what's funny? I'm watching the Yankee game here. I've got on mute against the Red Sox. And I told this story when I did the debate. I said that I was at the Yankee game October 30th of 2001 when the president came out and threw out the first pitch. And I said, it was 54, 56,000 at Yankee Stadium. Every single person's chanting USA, USA at the president. And at that point, it was not like a group of Democrats and a group of Republicans. Everybody considered themselves Americans. And I just felt like the president went out of his way to divide the country. I mean, maybe he didn't say, hey, I'm going to divide the country, but I surely think he and his people thought, let's take advantage of this situation and push through legislation, and we'll get this, this vote on the war going at a time when the midterms are coming up. And at that point, anyone who voted against the war would have been seen as being weak and pretty much would have had the end of their political career come about because of it. I just thought he took advantage of the country. I think his campaigning during the midterm season on the heels of 9/11 was kind of tasteless, and it made me feel like I'd been slapped in the face forever, chanting for him, and I just think that type of behavior doesn't deserve a second chance. No matter what you think of the tax cuts, his two big claims or two big pushes were the tax cuts and the war on terror. And regardless of how you feel about those two things, I think just the fact that he sat and presided over this, really divided feeling is reason enough to replace him. So, it wasn't like I said, hey, I'm just going to jump in and do this. I fully understood that I could lose some fans along the way, and that was a decision I made because I thought that, not just millions, but that, so what I'm doing is just what I feel is a little bit so that on November 3rd, if he's reelected, that at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror and feel like I did something about it,
Now, what made you decide, because I think a lot of people know this, but some may not, the debate with Bradshaw, that was your idea.
Yeah. This is when I was at the convention. First of all, I really mean this, I have kissed up to Vince before, and I'm not doing it now. When I say I really respect Vince for even allowing us to do it, I called up and volunteered to go to the Democratic convention just because I was sure that they wouldn't take me up on it. I really thought it was like a right-wing conspiracy, and Vince called me back like within an hour or two, and he's like, "So you really want to go?" And I said, "Yeah." And then he said, he offered the chance to go to both of them, and I was pretty sure they'd have a crew of guys raring to go to the Republicans. So, I've been around the locker room, and I hear little things here and there. So I knew they'd have guys willing to go. But I said, no, it's fine. Let those guys go. I'll go to the Democratic convention. And while I was there, I mentioned to Gary Davis, who's head of PR, I'm not sure his official job. But I said, hey, I've had some pretty spirited locker room conversations with a few of the guys, and I thought that we could have, pretty good debates, on college campuses. And that what it would do is not only would it get young people interested, but it would also be a good reflection on, on wrestling. And I always maintain the bar would be set so low for us that it wouldn't be too difficult to jump over. So I didn't specifically say Bradshaw. I specifically mentioned Flair because I said, hey, if people want to see me and Flair, in the same ring, they won't see it in a wrestling ring, but they could see it in a political ring. And then they said, it might get ugly. So make it personal. So Bradshaw, I hadn't even thought of Bradshaw, but I knew he was, on top of the fiscal side of things. I was pretty sure, based on what I've read and heard him say on TV, that he was a pretty big Bush backer. But it worked out good, and we had a good time, and we ended up having a lot of fun afterwards, just sitting there and reminiscing about the debate and everybody involved, from the director to the McMahons to me and Bradshaw to the people that we, had on our side, the University of Miami students, really felt like we'd done something, important in getting involved with the process.
So Bradshaw was a worthy opponent?
Yeah, Bradshaw was great. I wish I could have had direct rebuttal time because there were times, like, for example, if I got the first word in, that Bradshaw would follow up, and Bradshaw was real good, but then I wouldn't get to rebut his rebuttal. It would go to somebody else. So I felt like I could have handled what he said, but that doesn't mean that what he said wasn't well delivered and very impassioned,
Now, has any of this, and we'll come back after the break with more, but has any of this made you interested in getting into politics, or?
I don't know. I mean, I've thought about it a little bit, and I'm pretty happy with my congressman here. And if he's not reelected, it might give me some thought. I might give some thought to it. But like with the things that concern me, would probably be out of step with people on Long Island, and I would never consider running for anything above that because. To run for the Senate or something along those lines in New York would cost a fortune. And I'm with Jesse Ventura in saying that, politics is the only job where you ask people for money so you can do your job instead of doing your job and then asking for money.
Yeah.
So I've never been big on telling people, like when we had a gym in Florida, I never made a sale. I have trouble pushing a product on people, and
But you have to sell books, though.
Yeah, well, but I don't force them to buy it. If I actually had the book in hand and said, "Here, buy this," probably wouldn't have hit the bestseller list.
Anyway, we got to hit a break right now. We'll be back with more with Mick Foley. We'll talk about his book that's coming out this week. And WWE, Ric Flair, more on Ring of Honor, Hustle, and just the wrestling business in general, as well as we got a full bank of phone calls, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. You listen to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter, with Bryan Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly, and of course our guest this week, Mick Foley, whose book Tales from Wrestle Lane, it's spelled WRESCAL Lane. It's a children's book that he wrote, I guess, a couple of years ago. Will be out on Tuesday. Real quick, Mick, tell everyone about the book.
Oh man, I swear I really love this book. It's set based on the WWE superstars as little kids, all living on the same block and learning little life's lessons along the way. And I swear I think it's the best thing I've ever done, writing wise. And I know when Alex Marvez did an article, I think a year ago, I mentioned that. The failure to have that book published was the biggest disappointment of my career. And when he wrote the story, he put in parentheses, writing, like it was the biggest, disappointment of my writing career. And then I called him back up. I said, no, it was the biggest disappointment of my entire career. I really liked it, and I knew through reading it at this point, I've figured well over 10,000 kids, through reading at schools and libraries and camps and things like that. And it's like a sure hit, and what's nice about it is people who are not wrestling fans still enjoy it, and matter of fact, they usually don't even know that they're wrestlers until they've been told, because the Dudley boys, for example, are the bad kids on the block, and Stephanie's the cute kid trying to raise money, by taking her dad's old wrestling gimmicks out for a yard sale. So, for the wrestling fan, it's cool to see that Farouk's blue helmet is sitting on the table. But, and there's a couple of Gerald Briscoe illustrations that are priceless, but it really works well for the non-wrestling fans. So I was excited when I came back last year and spoke to Vince about getting it done. So this is it sounds ridiculous to say, but it's like one of the biggest accomplishments for me. I really like it.
Well, there's been I've read somewhere, and I don't know if there's any accuracy to this at all, and I haven't asked you about this. Is there any talk of you doing a radio show?
Yeah.
Okay, well then there is.
Yeah, where did you hear that?
Someone had sent me an internet thing like in the last couple of days, and I figured, and it was since the last time we talked, and I figured, well, I'd better ask you on the air.
Yeah, what happened is, as you know, 3 years in a row I've gone out to Hollywood and pitched ideas for series, and it hasn't been my idea, but credible people who have a track record of successful sitcoms have come up year after year. The idea of having a sitcom, or in the WWE case, an action drama built around me, and I never thought it was a particularly good idea, but I'd be an idiot not to go out there and pitch away. As a matter of fact, the Bob Tischler series from a few years ago, I thought was an excellent idea. I think that had a real good shot. So I've come to not put much credence in these things, and it was just a few days ago. When my manager, Barry Bloom, told me, that people in the radio people are raring to go, because I had gone out and done an audition, And they'd been, real surprised. They didn't even know what my interests were, and they were, pretty surprised that I was up on current events. And, obviously, when you're involved in wrestling, you do have some experience in speaking to the public. So it looks like it might actually happen. I still won't believe it till I see it, but apparently I can set up a studio in my house and I can, work from home. So it'll be a lot of fun if it does happen.
I did that for 16 months, but the darn dog. My dog became a celebrity. Bryan remembers all that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Would this be like just a normal mainstream show, or...
Yeah, I mean, there'd be current events. I told them when I got in, I said, I hope you guys know I know very little about, pop. I'm not like a pop culture guy. I don't listen to, the popular music or really see, the hit movies or things like that. I said, I really can't do much in that respect, but, I have opinions on certain things, and in some cases they're pretty well informed, and, generally people seem to like me. And I guess for them that was enough, So we'll see. But if it happens, it'll be fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had a blast doing the show, and when I was doing it from home. I mean, really, it's just you can eat right before the show, and you don't have to
during the show.
During the show, you don't have to fight traffic.
Well, it would certainly make me feel.
I never did that though.
Well, I've been sitting, so much reading over the last 4 years that. I'm at least excited that debate got done because I didn't feel like it was an entire waste of time. As a New York guy, essentially I've been made aware of the fact that my vote means absolutely nothing. And we were out in Ohio. I was saying, geez, it must be nice, to have politicians come by kissing up to you so regularly.
I hate the Electoral College.
Oh, they need to do it. I'll tell you this. I know we're not here to talk politics, but the three things I wish they'd do away with is the Electoral College, because it really puts the most emphasis on the people who care the least, which is the undecided voters. I believe, what Jesse Ventura says about the 1 6-year term, so that you don't have your president crisscrossing the country in the last 2 years of his the last 2 years of his term. It just seems ridiculous that a guy, and this would go for a Democrat or a Republican, if a guy has the most important job in the world, it just seems hard for me to believe he can do it as effectively when he's traveling across the country trying to convince people he needs to have that job for 4 more years. And the third thing I would do is I would not allow a sitting president to campaign for other candidates. It just seems like an abuse of the office. And I know Clinton did that almost as much as Bush did, and I didn't think it was right then either.
Yeah, I mean, because the Electoral College, what's really happened in this election, I don't know if this is something that because I paid closer attention to this election than others, and of course stemming from what happened in the last election, what we've really had is a few swing states are the whole election, because everyone's kind of figured, okay, like you mentioned in New York or in California, they kind of have a feeling where that's going to lie, and they know the states that are going to be the make or break states, and so it's like they're which is what you said, they're kissing up to those states as opposed to having to go all over the country and hit everyone.
Yeah. I mean, I think the president's been to Florida over 50 times in the last 4 years. And there are some states, like California, obviously, has a much larger population, and he's probably been there less than half that amount of time, probably a lot less than half. Yeah, that whole thing, I just think it's outdated and needs to go.
Yeah. I was amazed I guess because of how the election went and who won, because I had always figured growing up that the first time the guy who lost the popular vote or lost the popular vote won the election, that would kind of force the Congress into, okay, this thing's 100 years out of date, let's change it. But then, I didn't think of the fact that actually the guy who won was beneficiary of it, and he's not going to want to change it, and that's what ended up happening.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say, I understand people probably don't want to hear politics all night. I'll say that I have not gotten any negative feedback from doing this, and I've either gotten positive feedback or people who say, you know what, I don't agree with anything you say, but I really, respect your right to say it. So it's been really a lot of fun getting involved that way.
Now, getting into another subject, Ric Flair, you're a lot of people may not know this, but the last 2 days with Ring of Honor, you definitely worked Ric Flair into your own storyline.
Yeah, it's not like it's untouchable, and I even said on the Ring of Honor, I did a DVD, this straight shooting series for them, and I said, look, I don't have a problem with what he's done, which to me was completely disrespectful. Taking what's already there and benefiting from it. I do have a problem with taking what he's done and helping him benefit from it. So I said that's pretty much why I'm doing this, video with you guys instead of with WWE. So I figure as long as it's out there and as long as Steamboat is, we're doing a thing with Steamboat representing the pure wrestlers and I'm representing the hardcore wrestlers, that we might as well use it and have some fun with it. So. The last 2 nights we've done it, and it hasn't been mean-spirited at all, I don't think. I think it's actually been a lot of fun, and I think the crowd, I don't know what feedback you've got, I think the crowd really enjoyed it, especially last night, when I made Flair a bigger part of the presentation. Now,
when the book first came out, the Flair book,
right.
What different stages did you go through? Actually, in a sense, I guess you were aware of some of it even before it came out, maybe?
Yeah, I was aware of some of it only because the Observer reported what had been said in England. And I swear, when I first read that stuff, I thought, well, okay, he's going with that idea that he and I discussed. Because we had talked about, doing this legend thing and about how, the use of the word legend was thrown around a little too liberally these days, and we could have had a great. The truth is, if he hadn't written this book, I probably would be back in the ring with him right about now. But when I first heard about this thing in England, I thought, started reading it. I thought, all right, he's working this, he's working it, and then I thought, all right, he's overdoing it now. And so I called Johnny Ace. And, I guess the report was that I complained about it, and I did complain, but I really thought he was going to check, and that the word I'd get back was, hey, Rick's working that thing you talked about. And when I found out it wasn't true, it became obvious to me that he had absolutely no respect, for what I'd done in the business. Then I had absolutely no incentive to wrestle him, and I guess they thought that by pushing my name, and by pushing Bret Hart's name and making it seem controversial, that it would help the sale of the book, which it probably did. But I also think they thought they'd get a heck of a program out of it, which they won't. And so, in a way, I feel bad for Flair. I really do, because, this thing with Randy Orton is, I guess it's okay. But I think that he and I could have really had a real good program, and I think the promos we did would have brought out the best in each other, and it would have been something that wrestling fans would have really enjoyed. And I think it would have put him, put a brighter spotlight on him than he'd had in a long time. And so I feel bad, for him as a legend that he won't get that chance. But I just think that what he did was. Was very low class and not that well informed either.
Yeah. We're going to head to a break right now. We'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about Hustle, and then start taking, after the break, we'll start taking phone calls because we got a full bank of calls. I know a lot of people want to talk to Mick. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. Dave Meltzer, editor of Wrestling Observer Newsletter, with Bryan Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. Our guest, Mick Foley, whose book Tales from Wrestle Lane comes out in all bookstores, hopefully, on Tuesday. And he also has a shoot video through Ring of Honor. Tell them real quick about the whole process of that, how long it is, and things like that.
Yeah, they got a hold of me, I guess, back when Rob Feinstein was with ROH. He'd gotten a hold of me a year or so, maybe 2 years ago. And at that point, I really felt like there's enough stuff out, that I had written. Like, I didn't want to oversaturate the market on Mick Foley musings. So, I declined. And then when I got a message at ROH wanted to do it, this is right after the Flair thing, and I think that's the primary reason they wanted to do it, to get my feelings on that. And I had not had an avenue to talk about how I felt about the book. So why not do it? And I had a couple of years that I hadn't written about, and so I went in there with the understanding that it would be 2 hours, and then when I left it was 4.5 hours. And I think people really enjoy it. I went back and watched the first half of it just a few days ago to see what it looked like. And, I think for anyone who's a big wrestling, I think they'll really like it. And I think unlike a lot of the shoot videos, which seem to come off as being bitter, that this one is actually, a lot of fun in places. And I think people really, really be interested in hearing my take on the Flair stuff.
Okay, we are going to head to our hourly break. We'll be back with Mick Foley. We'll start taking phone calls as soon as we get back. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network.
Welcome back to Hour 2 of the Wrestling Observer with Dave Meltzer and Bryan Alvarez.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Let's get it on! Get it on!
Okay, welcome back to the Wrestling Observer Live. Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter with Bryan Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. And, of course, we've got Mick Foley as our guest and a full bank of phone calls. Want to start with phone calls right now because Mick's only got a couple, about a half hour or so left to go. We will start with Ed in San Antonio. Ed, what's going on?
Hey guys, Mick, it's always an honor to talk to you. What I'd like to ask you is when your novel Eden Brown came out, I bought it, and I thought it was a really good book. I thought everything was well done, and you really did a good job of making me feel for the character every time something really horrible happened. And you did such a good job that when the book was at the point where everything was good in Tatum's life and everything was great, I stopped reading the book, and I haven't been able to finish it. And I was wondering if you could give me, a chance to, explain to me why I should finish the book.
Oh, well.
The book, by the way, the book is out in paperback.
Yeah, the book is out in paperback, yeah. Well, why you should? Were you enjoying when everything was going well for him?
Yeah, I thought it was, really good. I mean,
you probably shouldn't finish it. Things that take a turn for the worse.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of.
Yeah, you know what? It's kind of I didn't realize how dark and depressing a story I'd written until I actually read it out loud for the audio. And apparently, I'll give you a little guideline. When you hit the chapter that says December 24th, that's pretty much when all the fun stops. It's a rough ride from then on in.
Yeah.
And I should point out that this next book it's no day at the beach, for the kid, because I guess to give you a wrestling analogy, apparently when I write I believe in getting a lot of heat on my heels, but it's not as dark and the heat is not quite as disturbing as it was in Eden Brown.
And is that the baseball book we're talking about?
Yeah, that's the baseball book,
which comes out in September. So it
comes out in September, and I just found out. I think we said this off the air. I don't think I said on air that. I was just told by my editor it was good to go. I fully expected to have to do some more minor tweaking on it, but I think I must have learned something along the way. Because I do feel like my writing got better, and she obviously felt like it didn't need to be restructured. And did you know I mentioned this on the ROH video, but even if the book doesn't sell at all, it'll still be a success because that's where I got the whole Randy Orton and Angle idea was from the novel.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I had one of the themes is whether or not a guy should be remembered for a lifetime of dedication and service or for one brief moment of cowardice. And after I wrote it, I thought, you know what, that's something we could explore in wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, it may not set the world on fire. It probably won't, but I probably need to write a novel every couple of years just to get good wrestling angles.
That's the way to do it. We're going to go ahead to a break right now. Ed, you got anything else for Mick?
Mick, one time you brought up the fact that you wanted Terry Funk to star in the movie of Peter Brown. Have you thought any more about that or brought that up?
You know what? I brought that up to him, and he went out and got the book and read it in a day, and he called me back, and he was like, Cactus, I think I could do that job. I'd have to change myself physically and get in an emotional state where I could do it, but I think I could do justice to the role. So one thing I might do, I've had a couple of, not offers, but, a couple of producers, asking me and talking to me about it. If it doesn't happen, I might approach Vince McMahon with the idea of doing a movie starring a wrestler, written by a wrestler, produced by a wrestling company that ultimately isn't about wrestling. And, if the Funker could turn in the type of performance I think he could, and if we had a good director working on it, you could have a very minor success financially, but a major success critically that could help the company, as a publicly held company in a way above and beyond what the actual take the movie brought in could do.
Okay, we've got to go ahead to a break. We're back with more Mick right after this. You're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, with Bryan Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly, and our guest, Mick Foley, whose book Tatum Brown is out in paperback. Of course, Tales from Rascal Lane, which is a kid's book about life's lessons, written by, with the idea of wrestlers growing up on a street corner together. Will be out on Tuesday, and he's also got a shoot video through ROH, 4.5 hours of Mick Foley talking about just his career in general, especially the last couple of years, and a lot about Ric Flair's book and his comments on Ric Flair, which we've talked about a little bit. And we've got a lot of callers here, and I want to get to Jack in Boston. Jack, what's going on?
Hey, guys. How's it going? Thanks for taking the call.
It's going good.
And, Mick, I'd appreciate if you didn't bring up the ALCS throughout this whole conversation, please.
Okay.
All right. Listen, Mick, I apologize for not being familiar with this already. What contractually are your ties to WWE, and was there any problem with you appearing at Ring of Honor? It's just something, curiosity I have.
Yeah, first let me just say that, Dave, they don't live on a street corner. They
live on a street.
Houses. They're not homeless. The street is Rascal Lane, so they're not in as bad off as you.
Well, Stephanie, how bad off could she be? Even in the,
the second thing, contractually, I don't have any contractual binds to WWE. So everything I have done in the past year has been on a handshake deal, and I love it that way. There was some talk about doing some, a multimedia contract, and I just never really heard anything after that. So I don't know how they feel about me doing Ring of Honor. I did mention it to Vince, and his feeling was, let me know who's out there. Like I mentioned earlier, I told Gabe Sapolsky that, I'd had that talk, and his feeling was if, guys could get the break, he'd be happy for him. So, it's a great relationship as far as I'm concerned. I met with Vince, personally a couple weeks ago. I had a good talk with him on the phone about a week ago, and I went into the studio, to cut a commercial for the children's book. I brought my 3-year-old in with me, and my 3-year-old doesn't know that I wrestled. Like, he just thinks every dad is his own action figure. So when he left the commercial, he kept talking about how much he liked going to Daddy's work. So now he thinks that my work consists of sitting on a couch and having food ordered in. So the relationship's very good.
How, Mick, now that you've got a sense of the product and been able to see Ring of Honor live and on tape, how far do you think they can go?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they started off with a kind of revolutionary idea that, storylines would be advanced through tape and DVD sales. It would seem like that would be somewhat limiting. I don't know if they're even looking to get a TV deal or not, or if they want, eventually want to do pay-per-views or whatever. But I think the idea that they want to succeed on a small scale instead of attempting to fail on a large one. Great idea.
and lose a lot of money in the process.
Yeah, I mean, and you know what? I mean, hopefully I'm not saying anything that will embarrass the poor guy, but I was, like I said, I watched that whole match, And it was interesting because when I tried to watch the first few minutes, I tried to go out like where the gimmick stand was, and people were all over me. And then I was trying to peek through the curtain, and people were all over me. And after about 25 minutes, I went out into a corner of the bleachers, and by that point, everyone was focused on the match. I didn't get bothered for the next 35 minutes. And we just kept on looking at Gabe, like running around and jumping in the air and clapping and all that. So I think he just loves having a good product out there, and obviously loves being a part of it. So as long as he keeps in mind, that no one who attempts to go big time succeeds, I think he's going to be okay.
Yeah. No, this is a subject I've been wanting to bring up to you, Dave, but I'm glad I can get mixed feelings on it also, regarding Taboo Tuesday. I just have to wonder, do you think the general fan, I guess, without an internet savvy, or perhaps even the internet fans, will actually believe that what matches we end up seeing at Taboo Tuesday are indeed the ones they voted for? Why wouldn't they think this is a work just like anything else in wrestling?
Well, I'm sure there are some people that feel that way, and from what I've been told, point blank, it is going to be all legitimate voting. But you're right. I could see why people would be cynical about it. I think it's a great idea, and I think it's got a lot of interest. I just don't know whether interest is going to translate into buys. Because, Dave, I think you said that, statistically, the things that draw are big matches that people are aware of and not, question marks.
However, I think that this as a novel approach would have worked. What scares me more than anything, which I've said on the show, is that it's on a Tuesday instead of a Sunday. So if it quote fails, we don't know if it failed because it was a bad night or failed because it was a bad concept. Because I think when you're doing 14 pay-per-views a year, doing one pay-per-view a year with this concept is a good idea because you need something. The pay-per-views start all coming out the same unless you get a couple different themes now.
Yeah, I do like the idea, but I think you're right. There's no constant there. There's no control group, right?
Right, yeah, because if it was on a Sunday, we would go, okay, well, usually they're doing X amount of buys. This was either up, down, or the same.
Right.
On a Tuesday, if it does low, we don't know that the concept failed because it might just be that Tuesday is a horrible day for pay-per-view, and on the West Coast, it scares me when you're, think about this. This show's 5 p.m. on the West Coast on a Tuesday. That's not really a great time.
Well, they still do have the 8 o'clock replay.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't buy the replay. But you're right. The hardcore,
if they're stuck in traffic, they're going to.
Yeah, the hardcore fans will buy it, and then the people who are going to buy every show will hopefully, for the most part, buy it. Because the other thing we've noticed this year is there's been some shows where that haven't been what I would call very enticing whatsoever, and they've actually, for the most part, except for the last one, they've actually all done better than I expected. So I think that there seems to be this bottom, number, like around 225,000 buys that they're getting, for a pay-per-view just because there's that many people that are going to buy every pay-per-view, I guess.
But I think what's scary is that at one point WCW thought they had a bottom of 225, and we saw it.
They got down to 50.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's troublesome to me, but hopefully they'll continue to give them a product that's at least, continues to be worth watching.
I'm sorry, Dave, do you really think that people are going to believe that the results are legitimate? Do you think they're...
You know what? What's funny is like, I don't know if they're going to believe it, but at the same time, I don't know if it's as important that they do for the selling of the show, in the sense of I think that they're going to know that they're buying a show and they don't know the matches, and that actually, in a sense, because now if they were doing this week after week, I think it would, or every month on pay-per-view, I think it would be a disaster. But I think that the idea of once a year, it's like, wow, we're going to see Hunter, and we're going to see him wrestle either Benoit, Shawn Michaels, or Edge, and we don't know what it is. I think just for one show a year, it's not. I like it, and I like the build-up for it. Whether and I'm saying, and if I believed 100% that these results were all predetermined, I still like the build-up for it. I do believe the results are going to be real, but hey, 3 weeks ago when I first heard it, I was skeptical, and now I'm not skeptical, but I also know that they're certainly leading the audience to a degree to what they want. But I'm more excited about this pay-per-view than the last 3 or 4. I mean, not more than Backlash, but since Backlash maybe.
And for what this is worth, I used to always check out where I stood in the PWI most popular ratings, even though I knew those weren't legit.
And everybody did those top 500s. There's some stories about those top 500s that are unbelievable.
Oh man, yeah. You want to hear my personal favorite?
Yeah.
It was the tag team from New England that had like varsity Letterman type of jackets, with the leather and the wool, and they had their yearly rankings in patches going down the sleeve. PWI.
Nick, one last question before I let you go. Something that the presidential candidates have been asked. What's the biggest mistake you've made in the past 4 years?
Oh, biggest mistake I made was actually not wrestling Vince at WrestleMania 17.
Really?
There you go.
I talk about that a little bit on the Ring of Honor thing. I said, I told him I was going to do it, when he fired me, in December of 2000. And I left with the understanding I was coming back to do the thing with Vince. And I should have kept in better touch with him because he had the XFL and we fell out of touch. And when I got the call to come back, it was not done in a way that it was not going to be done in a way that was to my liking. Just didn't make sense. And so I bailed out, and I always feel like I'm the boy who cried wolf to him. So that was my biggest mistake.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Okay, we'll be back with more with Mick just for a few minutes. Right after this, you listen to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer, with Bryan Alvarez, Figure 4 Weekly, and Mick Foley is our guest. He'll be on for the next couple of minutes. We're going to take as many calls as we can. We're going to Steve in Minnesota. Steve, what's going on? You're on with Mick Foley.
Hey, Dave, Bryan, how you doing?
We're doing good.
Good. How are you, Mick?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Hey, listen, I didn't listen to a lot of the first part of your show. I was listening on the internet. I was getting bits and pieces, but I hope I'm not over talking here about the election. Are you willing to talk a little bit about?
Oh, sure, of course.
Coming up? All right. Hey, Nick, you said an interesting thing in one of your interviews about the upcoming election. It was kind of a good point that you were making, something to the effect of some kid was going to bed hungry. He asked his dad about, why are
I remember that story.
Hungry? And
yeah.
You said, well, yes, you're hungry, but at least these people in another state
you never met,
they never met, are not going to be able to get married.
Right.
Well, I'd like to throw a point out there and tell me what you think on it. I'd like to actually take it a step further, and this kind of relates to the two candidates running. I can't get too excited about any of the things that are just issues out there. I mean, hunger is an issue because both candidates have, different ideas about, how to fight it. But what I'm wondering is how can I get excited about a candidate's plan to wipe out hunger when he's not willing to even grant, when he's willing to take away the basic right to life of other human beings. I mean, without
John Kerry.
Right.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, there's a few things I can't, if someone really has a firm belief as to when life starts, and they believe it starts at conception, I can't argue with that, and if somebody really thinks that, same-sex couples, if they honestly believe that's sinful and they can't get married, then there's really no convincing them, and otherwise, if a gang member really wants an automatic weapon and wants to kill a lot of people in a hurry, you can't really argue that the assault weapons ban shouldn't have been lifted. So I hear what you're saying, and there's no way on a wrestling show I'm going to be able to convince you otherwise. That's a belief, like Kerry said, and if you're extreme, right-to-life person, you believe that that's when life starts at conception, then there's not much I can say about it. But
I'd actually go farther. Yeah, and it is kind of weird. Here we are on a wrestling show. I never thought I'd be on a wrestling show talking about the abortion issue, but it just kind of puts all the other issues to shame. And I think it's more than a belief that life begins at conception. I think it's been scientifically proven. So, I mean, given the fact that there's been no scientific studies showing otherwise, isn't like the issues of like how to fight hunger, as the war in Iraq, right? All those issues just don't seem relevant when you would deny the basic right to life to a group of people.
Well, I'd love to have this talk with you when I have my radio show and we can talk about the pro-life, pro-choice issues in greater detail. But this is probably not the right place for it.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to take your point about hunger a step farther and say, well, I got even a more important issue here. He has a good plan to wipe out hunger, and I don't agree with...
Well, who has a good plan to wipe out hunger?
Right, Kerry does have a good plan to wipe out hunger, but how can I be excited about that without him...
Look, do you honestly believe that President Bush has thought 1 second about the suffering going on around the world? Do you think he cares about the people who are killed in Iraq? I mean, mean, let's not say that he has this incredible, respect for life, because if he did, he wouldn't be taking it in other countries. Like I said, let's get back to wrestling, because I understand where you're coming from, and I'd love to have that talk with you at another time in another place. But I think most of the people want to talk about wrestling at this point. We did cover the election stuff, and it's just not the right time or place to talk about it.
Okay, how about a quick wrestling question then?
Sure, go ahead.
All right. Is it legit?
All right, just wanted to run that by you. Now, when you were in ECW, and you were, and I forget what exactly the storyline was, but this is when my wife, who wasn't a wrestling fan, actually became a big fan of yours. It was an interview that you did, and it was the first time, I think, on a wrestling show where it was acknowledged that kind of what might be said on wrestling isn't exactly right, and that's when you said, I don't even know where Truth or Consequences, New Mexico is.
Yeah, that was against, when I was talking about Terry Funk, right?
Yeah, I think that was it. I didn't remember the storyline, but I wondered what was the rationale behind, like, starting to do that? I understand, like, the hardcore, what Paul Heyman was trying to do, but what was the rationale behind, like, actually saying, hey, some of this is not legitimate?
Because, I mean, it's one of those things, if you try to claim that everything you do is legitimate, then you have absolutely no legitimacy. And if you're willing to concede a few points, then people are more likely to believe you when you do talk the truth, which is why, tying this into politics, like, for example, if President Bush would be willing to admit he'd made a mistake, then I believe he'd have more credibility on issues. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, and I don't know. I think every answer that I've heard, there's credible people on both sides, saying, hey, I don't think it was a mistake because it accomplished this, it wiped out this regime, it did this. I mean, there's credible, intelligent people on both sides, so it's hard to know sometimes. I mean, you have intelligent people on both sides.
You think the president was right in saying that in not being able to recall a single mistake he'd made? Don't you think that's kind of dangerous if a president...
yeah.
Didn't he actually say that there are certain strategic mistakes that made, and he's willing to take responsibility for them? In the last debate, I believe, he said that there were certain...
Can you name one mistake he's been willing to take responsibility for?
He wasn't specific. He just said that there were just...
Why, but he couldn't name one.
I don't know if it got that far in the last debate. I think he kind of answered it, but he didn't get specific. He just said, yes, there were mistakes, but I don't think he wanted to address them there. But I think what he said is, though, hey, the big issues that people are talking about, people are saying we were wrong to go to Iraq, and I think he was saying, no, I don't believe we were wrong, because I believe we went there for a purpose. And, yes, looking back, you can always say you do things different, but, at the time...
Well, listen, there's an old adage that says that those who don't learn history are destined to repeat its mistakes.
Oh.
And he didn't even read his father's book.
I've seen that quote in Dave's newsletter many times.
I read that all the time. See, we got to get going because there's a lot of other people who want to talk to Mick. Okay.
All right. Hey, thanks a lot, Mick. Appreciate it.
We're going to go to Shiloh in Oregon. Shiloh, what's going on?
Hey, what's up? Mick Foley, it is an honor to speak with you. And I have a suggestion for a director for Tatum Brown, if it ever...
Okay, let's hear it.
I think that Gus Van Sant would be tremendous with that screenplay because he's an independent filmmaker. He's proven himself time and time again. I don't know if you've seen his latest work, Elephant. It's a kind of a what-if or retelling the Columbine incident. And he just is very gritty with his filmmaking, and I just think that he would respect and honor the Tatum Brown screenplay and story.
Now, do you have a way of getting a hold of him?
Well, he's out of Portland, Oregon.
Well, there you go.
Because, I think Spielberg would be good, too, but he won't return my phone calls.
Oh, that'd be a little bit out there.
I think, I think even if it takes 10 years, that an actor will come along who really wants to play that role, and that it'll be an actor with enough, pull to get it made. And I hope, I'll look into the Gus Van Sant thing. It wouldn't hurt to send him a copy.
Exactly.
Because I think someone would do a good job on it, and that it could be a small financial success.
I also have a vision for who should play the title role, and I think Willem Dafoe would be just absolutely amazing.
He could do a good job on it. There's any number of actors in that age who could put different takes on that character, which is part of the reason I think the character's really cool. It's like, kind of like Ebenezer Scrooge, that, a lot of different people can play him.
And then when it comes to politics, I got one word for all the listeners tonight.
Okay.
Make an educated decision.
Exactly.
And think it through. And please, whatever you do, don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Well, that's what we were telling people. 4 years ago, this SmackDown Your Vote was strictly bipartisan, and that guys just say get out there and vote. It didn't come across as being nearly as legitimate as letting guys know that, hey, people in wrestling do have strong opinions. So the fact that we had people representing both sides did make it, in my opinion, bipartisan. But we always told people, look, this is what I believe, but, your job is to go out there and learn the issues for yourself and make the choice that's right for you. But you're right. I believe there's a lot of Kool-Aid drinkers out there, and hopefully on November 2nd, they'll be outnumbered by people who've done their homework.
And then would you say, Mick, in regards to the WWE locker room currently, or the people that you've had talks about politics with in the locker room, is that a majority of the people in the locker room, are they pretty conservative?
I make guesses, and I haven't had political conversations around most of the guys because if they're not interested, I don't bring it up, and it's not like I'm hitting the Ring of Honor rings and
taking polls,
talking about the election. But I would say there's more conservative people than there are middle of the road people or liberal people. But wrestling is it's a performing art in its own way, and so you have creative people who do tend to be more progressive. So it's not like there aren't any of them, but I'd say they'd be outnumbered by by a few.
Now, real quick, is there, as far as Val Venus went, is there any reason why you didn't debate Val Venus? And I know
that was the guy. When I talked to Gary Davis, I specifically brought up Val because he and I used to. Have conversations, that were fun, and that was actually, I said to Val, hey, man, we should go to college campus with a group of like 4 guys, because Val's pretty far, he's pretty far out there as being an isolationist and things like that. And then, when he thought maybe a guy like Kane, who ultimately probably shouldn't do it because of his character, but he's kind of like a little right of center, and then I thought, I'd be there like just a little to the left, and Chris Nowinski is maybe a little more liberal than I am, and that we could go around with a panel like that. And then, Vince took that idea and, made it in Bradshaw, which I thought worked out really well. And Nowinski was a big part of that whole debate week. He was there at the high schools helping moderate debates and played his part.
Real quick, any time frame or anything as far as going to WWE, as far as being on Raw or SmackDown?
I really thought I'd be back on. I mean, I did pitch an idea. I mentioned I had a meeting with Vince. I did pitch an idea that would have brought me back around this time, but I thought that they were going a different direction with Taboo Tuesday as far as Randy and Hunter, and so my idea did not make sense. It was not in line with what they had lined up. So who knows? Maybe sometime, but I don't think I'll be back on to promote this book. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll be back in February or March or somewhere down the line. But I imagine I'll be back sometime. Okay, Mick, I want to thank you very much for joining us, and best of luck with your book. And we'll be seeing you certainly down the road and on TV, and hopefully the radio thing gets going too. It might happen. You never know. Yeah, life is pretty busy for a guy who hung up the tights a long time ago. Yeah, well, that's right. You're right. I see stuff with you every. But I guess we got to get out of here. But you enjoy the college campus speaking? Yeah. I did like 3 of them in the last 2 weeks. I've got a few more lined up. I wish it was a weekly thing. I really do like it. I mean, the forum is open for me, and I can pretty much say whatever I want. And I guess people really enjoy it. The feedback is really good, and I'd say like 3/4 of the people stick around afterward, for the signing. So apparently they like what they're hearing. Great. Okay, so we'll be talking to you soon, and we'll be back right after this. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter with Bryan Alvarez at Figure 4 Weekly, and we're going to start taking phone calls.
Right now, we're going to go to Bryan in Jacksonville. Bryan, what's going on?
Hey, Dave. I want to ask you about the possibility of integrating Raw and SmackDown again. I've been watching since '82, and I used to always enjoy how on either episode, any superstar could show up. And then after WrestleMania last year, when you had Kane and Taker and Goldberg and Brock Lesnar from out the shows wrestling, I thought maybe we'd come back a little bit. Is there any hope of that?
There's hope of it. I would do it more than they do it. At the very beginning, it's funny. At the very beginning, when the Raw and SmackDown differentiation took place, I wouldn't have done it at all. And I felt that they didn't do it the right way. They really didn't differentiate them to where you really thought they were competing brands. And they still don't. No one sees them as competing brands. They just see them as the two brands. So I don't see the idea of guys going back and forth more regularly as polluting the idea. And in fact, I think you need it because, in the couple of years that we've been doing the brand extension, Raw has gotten a chance to be freshened up because Hunter keeps needing new opponents, and he brought Benoit in, and he brought Edge in, this year. But SmackDown's kind of been left on the wayside, even though, there were a few guys that went over there and like trades, but they almost made sure that it looked weaker in that regard. I like the idea of guys going back and forth for programs and some of it. I don't think, as a rule, I think that guys, for the most part, should only be on one show during a given week, but I would mix and match, and switch guys just to freshen up programs a lot more than they do if it was up to me.
Yeah, because I understood that it was hard for them to do all the traveling with the house shows and everything, but if they just did one a week, either Raw or SmackDown in a given week, that.
No. They need the money from the two shows a week. I understand that there's an argument of only one show a week, and that would make people want to see the one show more. But so much is dependent upon advertiser income. And when they
I don't mean going down to one show. I mean that if wrestlers could integrate between the two, rather than up on Raw, just show up on one episode per week instead of both of them.
Yeah, I've been a firm believer in that ever since the idea of the two brands being competition has been blown. I've been a firm believer of guys, like this week Hunter ends up on SmackDown, not Raw. The next week somebody else, and then you build up you can build up new feuds. And it would be dependent upon who's I would be booking pay-per-view lineups and trying to get good pay-per-view lineups, and then have the guys for, let's say, a month go back and forth, if you know what I'm saying.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Can I ask you one more thing?
Sure, go ahead.
Lately, they seem to be on this reality TV thing. You have the voting for Taboo Tuesday. You have the voting for the $250,000 Diva Challenge. The Tough Enough is coming to SmackDown. How is that affected? I don't like seeing that. I know I heard Mick Foley earlier say he liked the idea behind Taboo Tuesday, but it seems to me like it's taking a little something away from the show. What do you think of that?
Again, because they do 14 pay-per-views a year, you need some hooks and you need some of them to be different. When the idea of Taboo Tuesday first came up, I was kind of negative towards it because I started, my thought is that like you need writers in charge of where this thing is going, and it needs to be laid out. Because I come from a period watching wrestling where the promoter and the booker, laid out months and months and months in ahead, so they never got lost in storylines, and they never, you know what I mean. And that's all changed, and I wish it was like that. It's not. So to me, I like the uniqueness of it. I like the build up for it. So I'm not negative on it now. The Diva thing I thought was kind of a failure, and I think it's going to be even more of a failure because they want to bring in more women from the thing. The Tough Enough thing, I was a big fan of Tough Enough, but I don't like the idea of it being on SmackDown. I think that it doesn't mix well. Again, and it hasn't happened yet, so maybe I'll change my mind. But my gut feeling on the thing is that if you want to do Tough Enough, get a 30-minute-a-week TV show, and it was good when you did it, but not in the middle of SmackDown. I think it's going to break the momentum of the show.
It just seems like, and I could be wrong, it just seems like they're trying to follow this whole reality TV thing.
They are, and the thing that's negative on that is that the reality TV thing has already passed its peak and it's on the way down, and it's never good to get on a fad on the way down. I mean, it's like if it was 2 years ago when they were doing this, maybe yes, but it's like they're jumping on the wrong thing. They should be jumping on the crest of the next wave, not at the, after this wave is already splashed.
Right, absolutely.
Yep.
I had the privilege a couple of weeks ago. You had Bobby Heenan and Jim Cornette on, and I got to talk to them, and I had asked them, where Raw will go in the future beyond Jim Ross's day. And since then, I've been looking around through WWE at the announcers that they have now with Michael Cole and Taz and Cole. Failed to see anybody who could ever step into Jim Ross's shoes. What's your feeling on that, Dave?
Of the guys they have now, no. And again, I don't know this. They've hired a guy from Kansas City, Todd Romero, who I've never seen. But certainly, you know, Todd Grisham, I did see him on the Benoit DVD, and it scared me to death. You know, that they would unleash that man on you know, doing so little homework. And I haven't seen him. I know that he's on one of the weekend shows now. You know, because they've taken out Snow off because of the Tough Enough thing. So I guess he'd be on Heat now. But I haven't seen Heat because we do the show. So I don't know how he's doing. But, you know, like Coach, you know, Coach is a fun character, but play-by-play guy, he was a disaster those weeks that he was on. I mean, it was horrible.
You know, Jim Ross, he can make it feel like World War III is going on. He really makes you believe what's happening, and he gets so into it. I don't even know how he does it every week. He loses his voice at the end of every Raw.
He's experienced, and, you know, he watched so much wrestling growing up and learned from those guys. And there's nothing that can beat. I mean, when it comes to the knowledge of wrestling and understanding wrestling, there's nothing that can be beat from growing up watching a lot of different versions of wrestling to give you a well-rounded view. I mean, one of the things that's really sad about people who are growing up, you know, Bryan probably gets this because, you know, Bryan's a lot younger than me. And, you know, Bryan grew up 10 years too late in the sense of, but he at least still had the opportunity to see some different versions of wrestling. People who are growing up now, they are only seeing this one version of wrestling. And it's going to be hard to have a lot of creativity when you've only seen one product your whole life.
Right, absolutely. Yep. There used to be so many with Silver Tongue, Tony Schiavone, Larry Zbyszko, and Jesse the Body. You know, they were all great.
Yeah, there were a lot of good announcers because there were a lot more announcers, but also because the announcers were really into the wrestling. And now they're trying to get, you know, nice looking television faces and say we can teach you wrestling, but if they don't have the national wrestling, they're going to think it's a joke, you know, or beneath them, or they're not going to know who Billy Robinson is. You know, like Michael Cole will throw out that name, and it makes me cringe because it's like, okay, who is Billy Robinson, Michael? You know what I mean? And Michael, and believe me, Michael Cole really tries. I can tell he's working much harder than he has in the past. But it's still, when I listen to Jim Ross talk about Wilbur Snyder, just as a name, I know Jim Ross knows exactly what he's talking about, and he could pick Wilbur Snyder out of a police lineup. I don't think, you know, Todd Grisham could pick Jushin Liger out of a police lineup, if you know what I'm saying. And that's sad.
That's if everyone was unmasked except him.
I know. Okay, Bryan, thanks very much. I want to get to another call real quick. Okay, I'm going to go to Scott in Galveston. Scott, what's going on?
Dave, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing great.
I just wanted to let all your readers know that they're going to have another chance to read a little something by Mick Foley. He's doing our foreword for the Terry Funk biography, which comes out in March.
Okay, I want everyone to know about that book because I have read probably, I don't know, what percentage of that book have I read, 80%, 90%?
Probably about 80%.
Okay, that book is great. I just want everyone to know. And Scott, who's calling, is writing the book with Terry Funk. That is going to be one of the best wrestling books that there have been because, you know, I mean, the one thing that Terry Funk has, and Flair had it too, is they have had so much experience at so much different forms of wrestling and different wrestlers coming from the old territorial system. And Funk, even, you know, actually a lot more than Flair and internationally. And I almost had my sights, I would say, set so high on a Funk book because I knew what it could be. But I want to say it delivers. Everyone will like that book.
Well, I just wanted to touch base and say great show tonight. I always enjoy listening to Mick Foley, and everybody look for that Terry Funk book in March.
Okay, great, Scott. Thank you very much.
Hey, y'all have a good night.
Okay, we will be back with more. We'll try to get one more call in. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Bryan Alvarez, a Figure 4 Weekly. We're going to go to Mick in Berkeley. Mick, what's going on?
How you guys doing?
Doing really good.
I just want to say that it's really great to hear, politically, to hear Mick Foley. It's good to hear anybody that is far from the right in wrestling. I'm one of the few, as you know, Berkeley liberal callers that's also a wrestling fan, and am banished by a lot of my peers for it. But irregardless, you know, I was was really offended in 2000 when they did the election, and Jerry Lawler said on the airwaves something like, "Come on, Gore, just concede, just concede," something like that. And I just wanted to bring that up with you and see if you remember that and what you thought of it.
I remember the night before the election on Raw, and that was, I know what you're talking about actually occurred after the election.
Right.
But the night before the election on Raw, oh, boy. I mean, I just felt that that they abused that thing because it was pushed as, nonpartisan.
Right.
And then the night before, Lawler just went crazy. And then, afterwards it had already been done, it didn't bother me as much after the fact, but it bothered me a lot that, that they did that the night before, because I don't believe Lawler did it by accident, and it made me think, I was expecting it all along. I was expecting all along they were going to do this thing where they were going to be nonpartisan, and then last week, hit it.
Right.
And when they did it just made me kind of sad. It wouldn't have mattered which side it was for.
It's the point.
Yeah, it's the point. But I also knew that would be the side it would be for.
Well, for me, it's like on this one too. Again, they're doing nonpartisan, even more than ever before. But it's almost like that the company's right, just because of the demographic and because.
Yeah, but I don't think that they're. I don't think they're shoving it down your throat. And in fact, the fact that they did that debate, and most people thought that Mick won the debate, and they put it on their TV. And when I watched the presentation of it on their TV, that's what it looked like to me. To me, it's like knowing how much Vince loves to manipulate things to what he wants. I felt that it was very better of Vince than he has been in the past in many things to not interfere in it more, or not. Not portray it as the one side was so much better than the other.
I agree, yet I still feel like they're doing a public babyface image and behind its curtain heel, it's PC to be pro-voting for young people, but yet they still have their own financial political agenda to some degree.
Well, of course they do, because they're rich people, and rich people,
One final question that's far more appropriate for this show, and that is, are they just going to do on-the-fly Monday Nitro hotshot booking after they find out what happens at Taboo Tuesday, and how are they going to calculate all the voting from internet and in the arena the night of the show?
I don't know how they're doing that, but we're totally out of time, but I think that they've got all situations kind of planned, and they're leading the people, so they think they know where it's going.
Right.
Okay, we'll be back next week with Mike Tenay. You're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network.